I have described two distinct contracts with their different characteristics and consequences, and everyone has understood. But who invented these contracts? How have they emerged? We must make a slight digression, a brief analysis of the spontaneous process by which institutions form. The goal of an economic science is to study the spontaneous market order, and economists view the market as an extremely complex process of human interaction, in which we all participate. One of the great surprises and wonders we find in economics is that there is an order which emerges on its own, without anyone's having designed it. And that order is precisely the object of research in economic science, without a ministry, an authority, or a social engineer to dictate what must be done. Merely through the interaction of human beings, men and women like you, and based on our nature, certain patterns develop spontaneously and give rise to institutions and the market, which are the economist's object of analysis and research. How do these institutions emerge? We must define an institution as any patterned behavior which emerges through evolution and custom over a very prolonged period of time. One of the great contributions of the Austrian school of economics, founded by Carl Menger, is that it was able to explain in detail, in analytical terms, the spontaneous emergence of institutions. In fact, Carl Menger does so impeccably in his theory on the emergence of money. Menger carries out the analysis in abstract terms, and he applies it to a concrete institution. He considers the emergence and evolution of money, though he expressly states that the same theory can be applied to any other type of social institution, such as the language we speak. The language we speak, Spanish, English, French, etc., was not discovered nor created by anyone. It is the result of a spontaneous evolutionary process. Morality and legal principles are also institutions which spontaneously emerge in an evolutionary manner. How? Well, it is very simple. A few people, a vanguard of mankind in certain historical circumstances, make the entrepreneurial discovery. The light bulb goes on for them, and they discover before everyone else that they better achieve their ends if they systematically adopt certain behaviors. For example, in the sphere of money, a few people realized, in a particular historical context, that the problem the double coincidence of wants posed in bartering was avoided if, in exchange for their goods in the market, people asked not for something they needed to directly consume, but instead for something they noticed was more frequently exchanged. And, depending on the historical circumstances, that good varied. What was used in ancient Egypt? Well, read the Bible. The swells of the Nile left such fertile soil that grains of wheat were used. In ancient Mesopotamia, head of cattle, etc. So people began to demand a certain good, not for direct consumption, but as a medium of exchange, with the idea of exchanging it in the future for what they really needed. Since that good changed hands very frequently, it was easier to find someone who, in exchange for wheat, for instance, could provide what one wanted. If that behavior is successful, then by a process of imitation, a second vanguard and a third and a fourth wave of human beings began to copy the successful behavior of the first people. And as a result, the chosen good is more and more demanded as a medium of exchange. That behavior pattern becomes more and more widespread. Well, once the behavior pattern is predominant among human beings in a particular society or culture, the institution emerges. And it makes no difference whether it is money or language. No one discovered Spanish, for instance. Linguistic studies show that it was in the mountains of Burgos that people began to speak Spanish in a way somewhat similar, though very archaic, to the way we speak it today, and that it began as a corruption of Latin. But Spanish did not suddenly appear by magic. Instead, one generation of people after another did their bit, contributed their own special characteristics, and proposed words that were refined until they came into general use. Spanish is still evolving even today. If we could travel in a time machine and compare the way Spanish is spoken 300 years from now with the way it is spoken now, we would find significant changes, though we might understand almost everything we heard. The same is true of law and morality. The great paradox and lesson of economics is that the institutions most important to human life, legal, moral, linguistic institutions, without which we could not understand each other, economic institutions, like money, etc., incorporate such a large volume of information, knowledge and experiences. In fact, thousands and thousands of human beings have contributed first-hand knowledge and experiences over generations and generations, over extremely prolonged periods of history. These institutions incorporate a volume of information so large that it far surpasses the capacity for understanding and analysis that any one human being has, or that any group of human beings have, no matter how wise they are. To put it another way, though it may make us dizzy, the institutions most important to our lives and to civilization cannot have been deliberately designed by human beings, because they lack the necessary mental capacity. Without a doubt, these institutions have sprung from the interaction between many, many human beings over very lengthy periods of history. But such institutions have not been designed, nor will human beings ever be able to consciously and deliberately design them, because we lack the mental capacity to do so. In fact, if we insist on improving institutions from above, we destroy civilization. That is another of the messages of this course. We will consider it further when we study the theorem of the impossibility of socialism. An economist is a person who scientifically studies this spontaneous evolutionary process through which social institutions emerge and take shape. Of all the institutions, I have mentioned the most important ones, like money, which is the quintessential social institution, and all the others depend upon or follow it. For money permits an exponential and almost unlimited increase in exchanges. It is in exchanges that human beings need to talk with each other, to reach an understanding, and close deals, and therefore what used to be numerous dialects spoken in different valleys converged into one language, for people would go down to the market, and to exchange some leftover milk or a cow, they would need to talk to the other person. And so dialects were gradually refined and gave rise to Spanish. And if there were numerous exchanges, people needed to close the deals, to seal them with a handshake. And so law emerged, legal principles and their implications, and also morality and manners, etc. These institutions gradually emerged through an evolutionary process, and the process and institutions are the object of research in economics. The great wonder of an economics course is the discovery that those spontaneous orders are not and cannot be deliberately constructed by human beings. If we insist on constructing and improving them, we destroy them. Also, we learn that they incorporate a volume of information which far exceeds the mental capacity of any human being or group of human beings, no matter how wise or good. Mankind's fatal sin is a sin of intellectual pride, of arrogance, of believing oneself God, and capable of improving society at whim through the use of coercive state power. We will see that to pursue this goal is to destroy society and create limitless conflicts, genocide and suffering. This is the theorem of the impossibility of socialism, and we will study it when the time comes. At this point, it should be easy for us to grasp how general legal principles have been gradually refined in the specific area of the loan contract and the deposit contract, which we have analyzed. Of course, it is very easy for us to analyze them because they are already there, but they have emerged and been refined throughout an evolutionary process identical to the one I have just described.